What is a nominal exchange rate? It is the conversion of currency from one country to another's. Essentially, an exchange rate explains what your dollar is worth in any other country. An example of this is 0.63 US dollars per Australian dollar. What this rate tells you is that if you are an Australian, your dollar will be worth $0.63 in America. Just like inflation rates, the term appreciation translates to an increase in the exchange rate, meaning that your dollar is worth more, and the opposite for depreciation. A real exchange rate gives you the rate that the goods of one country can be exchanged for the same goods in another country. It is dependent on two factors, the first being the concept of nominal exchange rate that we just went over in the last slide, and the second being relative price of goods between countries. They're related in this formula, and I'll give an example of this in the next slide. So using the nominal exchange rate, which is 0.63 US dollars per Australian dollar, we multiply that by the price per loaf in Australia, and that gives us the price of the loaf in American dollars, which is where the relative price factor comes in. Dividing this by the price per loaf in America, that gives us 1.05. This number tells us that one loaf of Australian bread is worth 1.05 loaves of American bread. The American loaf is a tiny bit cheaper. Just like with goods, the law of supply and demand applies to exchange rates too. If you remember the simple graph of supply and demand from Econ 102, the graph applies to exchange rates of currency as well. So imagine this market is actually the buying and selling of different countries' currencies. As you can see in the graph, the demand tends on a downward slope, and this makes sense because the more expensive your money is, as in your exchange rate, the less people will be willing to buy it because foreigners now have to spend more of their own money in order to buy yours. On the other hand, the supply slope tends upwards because more people are willing to sell this money at a higher price, i.e. a higher exchange rate. Where the two slopes meet, we reach an equilibrium, and this is the price or value of the currency where the amount supplied is equal to the amount demanded. Any price above this will result in a surplus, meaning too many sellers and not enough buyers, and any price below would mean a shortage, meaning too many sellers and not enough buyers. The exchange rate of currencies is determined by the demand for one country's currency in exchange for another. Some things that impact the demand is the amount of people from other countries wanting to buy goods from another. The more foreign businesses that want to purchase your products, the higher the demand for your dollar. How attractive you are to other countries to invest in. This could be other countries investing money to create buildings in your country, or through portfolio investments into stocks and bonds. And third, the expectation of the value of your dollar to rise. The supply curve behaves just like the demand curve, except opposite. If you're demanding more of a currency, that means you're supplying your own. The supply of dollars happens when the owner of one type of currency wants to trade it. In other words, sell it for a different type of currency. Here are some things that cause a shift in supply. When a country experiences an economic boom, it will result in an increase of consumption of goods from other countries. This means that more citizens will trade their own currency for the currency of the country of interest in order to buy their products, shifting the supply curve to the right, i.e. increasing the supply of their dollar. Another factor that could shift the supply curve leftward would be when the interest rate of another country rises. This will incentivize foreigners to invest in that country, thus shifting the supply curve leftward. The next step is to choose two different countries and the exchange rates between them, and as you can probably tell from my previous slides, the two I chose were Australian versus US dollars. I grabbed this chart from exchangerates.org, and what it shows us is that the Australian dollar depreciated significantly against the US dollar in 2014. The reason behind this depreciation, the Australian economy relies heavily on the export of iron and coal, and in 2014, where we see the depreciation start to happen, the need for these two resources dropped, leaving fewer people interested in buying Australian products. This is exemplified by the first factor of shifts in demand. The decrease in the need for domestic products decreases the demand for domestic currency. This meant fewer people interested in buying or exchanging their currency for Australian dollars, causing a shift to the left. This results in a new equilibrium point, which values the Australian dollar at a lower quantity of American dollars, meaning the exchange rate goes down. In early 2014, at the equilibrium point, the Australian and US dollar exchange rate was approximately 0.89, and by the end of 2015, the exchange rate had fallen to around 0.73.